Alice, Alice, wake up, we need to head to the airport. Hearing my coworker's voice jolted me awake. I looked around at the hotel room. Noticing my pale face and dripping cold sweat, my coworker gave me a concerned look. That's when I realized I had been reborn. You okay? Forcing a smile, I replied, yeah, I'm fine. Let's go. The drive to the airport wasn't exactly short, so I gathered my thoughts along the way. I met my fiancé David through a blind date. He's decent looking, and his family owns 2 small factories, making them modestly well off. I'm an only child. My parents are both retired and managed to save a nice dowry for me. I work for a public company and make around $3-4K a month. Then there's my cousin Mandy. Her parents favor her brother over her by a mile, so my parents often helped her out. I bought her a computer and a phone back when she was just in vocational school, and I'd give her some money now and then. I was on a business trip and was supposed to return the day after tomorrow, but since I wrapped up early, we decided to return sooner. I thought I'd surprise my soon-to-be husband, but stumbled upon him and my cousin in a sordid affair. To keep it under wraps, they killed me, stole my dowry, and went through with the wedding. I can still faintly remember the stabbing pain and David's cold look while Mandy's arrogant smile lingers in my mind. I blinked my eyes open and steadied my breath. Gathering my wits, I picked up my phone and invited relatives from both sides over to my house for tomorrow. The next day, as I reached the airport, I got a text from my mom saying they were already on the way. I ran into David's parents at the community gate, and we waited together for a bit. Once everyone was gathered, I led them to my place. Alice, is there a special occasion today? David's mom asked. I smiled and said, well, since David and I are getting married, your family already mentioned the bride price, and I figured it's time to discuss the dowry. I wouldn't want y'all to feel shortchanged. That's why I invited everyone over just when I got back from my trip. David's parents perked up immediately, cheerfully saying, we're family. No need to keep a tally. Marriage isn't just about money. But their eagerness betrayed their true intent. Meanwhile, my uncle and aunt occasionally flashed sly looks, and my parents shot disapproving glances my way. David's family's businesses were failing, which was why they wanted me for my dowry. As for the bride price, they figured it'd end up back with me after marriage anyway. To play it safe, they aimed to have me get pregnant first for a shotgun wedding. But I was cautious about that. My uncle and aunt always thought leaving family wealth to a woman was a waste, thinking it should all go to their son. It was all so comfortable as we chatted, the atmosphere couldn't have been better, but when we entered the house, the shocking sight froze everyone in place. Mandy and David were too caught up in themselves to notice us, and when they finally did, Mandy let out a piercing scream. After haphazardly getting dressed, the tense crowd sat in the living room, looking grim. David's parents looked especially livid, pretending to scold David, while Mandy, lips tightly pressed, bore hickeys on her neck. My parents looked furious as my uncle and aunt eyed each other with a hint of satisfaction. Meanwhile, I stayed expressionless, watching the drama unfold. David's parents, reprimanding David, kept stealing glances at me and my folks. David's mom, on the brink of tears, held my hand, repeatedly apologizing and calling David a jerk, saying sorry for what I went through. You must apologize to Alice, David. She cried, feigning care. Our hurtful actions with little Alice here need to be resolved. Breaking up the event would just cause a mess, and we don't want that, right? She patted my hand, listen to me, dear, let this thing slide, and if it happens again, I promise I'll give him a good scolding. She then shot David's father a look. David's father caught on and swiftly kicked David. Did you hear that? Apologize to Alice. David's face showed mixed emotions of resentment and reluctance, and he said nothing for a long time. Going through this back and forth seemed to ease my parents a bit, though they still seemed a bit conflicted, while my uncle and aunt seemed less pleased with Mandy. Before I could say anything, Mandy fell to her knees, tears filling her eyes. She pitifully looked around, settling her gaze on me. Alice, I know I've wronged you, but I truly love David. She lowered her head and began to cry. All these years, you've had so many admirers, but I've only ever loved David." With her unsubtle digs at my love life and seeing David's swaying resolve, I couldn't help but find the situation amusing. God knows how strict my parents were. They practically interrogated any guy who showed up before college, and now here she was insulting them to their face. My dad clenched his teeth, glaring at my uncle and aunt. "This is how you raised your daughter?" My uncle and aunt looked awkward, but Mandy seemed unfazed. She glanced shyly at me before turning to David's mom. "Auntie, can I stay by David's side? I don't mind if he gets married to Alice. After all, David was my first man." "Anne." She didn't finish her sentence, but she gently touched her belly, which said it all. The scene made everyone's expressions vary. My uncle and aunt looked openly ecstatic. To them, David was the perfect son-in-law, who would bring in a substantial dowry, just in time to help their son get married. My parents looked completely grim, and David's mother's face showed nothing but conflict. Seeing the situation, David suddenly knelt down. "Mom, I really love Mandy. I can't let her be a mistress. Besides, she's carrying my child now, your very first grandchild. Do you want him to be an illegitimate child?" Upon hearing this, David's mother looked even more conflicted, shooting a glance my way. But I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Wasn't Mandy already his mistress? My laugh caught everyone's attention, making Mandy blush and David's mother a bit awkward. David turned his anger towards me. "Alice, what's so funny?" He glared at me, then said sternly, "Mom, Dad, Uncle, Aunt, I've been hiding something from you all." I hesitated to say it because Alice is a woman, and it could impact her future, but today I have no choice. Straightening up, David glanced smugly at me. "The truth is, Alice is infertile." This statement was a real bombshell. Everyone turned to look at me. I went from shocked by Mandy's pregnancy to dumbfounded by David's claim. The room was filled with complex reactions, but when I snapped out of my stupor, I just watched the pair of cheaters carry on with their show. Amused and unimpressed, David didn't know yet, the marriage test results had been with me for a few days. I was busy with a trip then, and knew the timing had to be right to get the most out of revealing it. So, I had kept it to myself. David had low sperm motility, and the chances of naturally conceiving were very slim. And if Mandy did carry to term, who knows what surprises might be waiting. David kept going. I even secretly poked holes in the condoms a few times, but Alice never got pregnant. She probably knew she was infertile, which is why she was extra cautious. My parents were livid, struggling to keep their composure with worry etched on their faces. They had no clue to me. David was just a complete joker, but his shamelessness never ceased to amaze me. I gave my parents a reassuring glance. David pulled the blushing Mandy into his arms, but after only a few times together, "Mandy's pregnant with my child," he scolded. "Mandy, why didn't you tell me sooner? What if it hurt the child?" Mandy sneaked a peek at me. "I was worried it would make things difficult for you and Alice." David was consumed with sympathy for Mandy, pleading with his mother, "Mom, let me be with Mandy. I don't even like Alice, you guys were the ones who forced me to go on the date." I sneered, remembering how David seemed anything but coerced. We'd been together nearly a year, and he never said no to the expensive gifts I bought him. His gifts to me were cheap little trinkets, not even a branded lipstick, let alone a designer bag. They were labeled as handmade, though I later discovered they were from his family's small factory meant for wholesale. Seeing me silent, David grew even bolder. "Look at Alice, I just wanted a wife to take care of me. Can Alice do that? Plus, she's a woman making a high salary and always on trips. Who knows what she's really doing? She's just a useless hen. Having her would only bring endless trouble." My parents were fuming at David's bold, baseless accusation, but as lifetime academics, they didn't know how to respond to his crass behavior. David's mom looked visibly tempted, her gaze shifting. Just then, I clapped my hands, drawing everyone's attention. I stood and applauded. What a great performance. Mandy and David flushed with anger, and David's mom was embarrassed. David opened his mouth to speak, but I slapped him hard enough for my hand to sting. Everyone was shocked, and the room went dead silent. Mandy shattered the silence with a shriek. "How dare you hit David? I slapped her too and shook my hand, smiling. Well, I'm hitting both of you. David, realizing he was in the wrong, just stood there glaring, his cheek red from the slap. Before anyone else could speak, I moved toward the door. With everyone watching, I opened it wide. All right then, enough of the show, now get out of my house. Once it was just me and my parents left, peace returned. My parents hesitated, then said, Alice, if the problem can be fixed, then fix it. But if not, let it go. I quickly interrupted, don't worry, Mom and Dad, I'm fine. David's the one with the real issue. I showed them the test results, and their faces turned from confusion to understanding. After a moment, my dad burst into laughter, and my mom nodded, obviously relieved. So, what about the child Mandy's carrying? My mom was a bit hesitant, and my dad picked up on it, his anger just below the surface, spreading rumors about my daughter. Huh? Let's see what this kid is like when it's born. Hearing that, my mom relaxed. Her main worry was that my dad might show unnecessary kindness because it was his own brother involved. It was around dinner time, so I took my parents out to eat. I could still hear them grumbling occasionally. You wouldn't believe the look on your aunt's face when she left, like a proud rooster. She was so smug. What an ungrateful person. Didn't realize how much we've helped them over the years. And now? My parents explained to each person who got an invite that the wedding was off. Inevitably, it became a hot topic among people, and both David's family and my uncle's family were the target of gossip. My life got back on track, except for the sympathetic looks from colleagues that sometimes bothered me. But I honestly didn't think there was more to come. When David's mom came looking for me, I was still at work. Aiming to avoid a scene at the office, I took her to a nearby coffee shop. Alice, why not go ahead with the wedding with David? She suggested. I was so shocked I dropped my spoon into my coffee. I looked up, studying David's mom closely. Until her discomfort grew, I became sure she was serious and quite casual about it. I laughed out of disbelief, momentarily unsure how to respond. So I simply asked, what about Mandy? David's mom seemed encouraged, thinking there was hope. Her eyes lit up as she said, don't worry about her. Once she gives birth to my grandchild, she won't be in your way. Just quit your job and take care of David and the kid. I know David well enough, as long as you are gentle and agree with him, he won't be distracted by other women. Since I didn't interrupt her, she went on, a woman needs to marry well to have a good life. Our David, he's good looking, comes from a good family, always been popular. So if some girls chase him, you have to understand. As for your current situation, we're not looking down on you either. Just do as I say, and you'll have a good life staying home caring for the family. I couldn't help but laugh. The noise stopped David's mom mid-sentence. She frowned at me, asking, what's that supposed to mean? I replied casually, you're getting ahead of yourself. Looking at her with a smirk, I continued, do you really think your son is such a catch? A creep who can't keep it in his pants. And you still act all high and mighty? Like father, like son, I guess trash attracts trash. I should thank my cousin for taking out the garbage. They're perfect for each other. My words made her face go red and pale in turns. She stood up, yelling at me in a dramatic outburst. Who do you think you are? A worn-out shoe, a barren hen. You think anyone would want you now? Don't know what your parents taught you, but those two old fools don't get it. My son wanting you is your family's good fortune, yet you refuse? Hearing her, I realized she'd approached my parents first. As things escalated, I picked up my coffee and threw it in her face. The world seemed to pause, then David's mom screamed. I slammed my cup down with a thud, glaring coldly at her. The look in my eyes must have intimidated her because she stayed silent for a moment. Honestly, I still haven't figured out how she dared to come to me, had the audacity to approach my parents first, really hadn't lost enough face? Ignoring her reaction, I left immediately. Knowing David's mom went to my parents, I couldn't stop worrying. Over the weekend, I went to see them but didn't expect the bustling scene at home. As I opened the door, everyone turned to look at me. It was my uncle's family, including their precious younger son. My presence surprised them all. My parents were pleased yet slightly embarrassed, while my uncle's family was excited, which was odd to me. "Alice, why are you back?" It was my aunt who spoke first. I said with a sarcastic smile, "Why, do I need to report to you first before coming home?" She was awkwardly silent as I noticed Mandy giving her looks. She hesitated before speaking. "Alice, I heard your dowry is already with you." I looked at my parents, who were already visibly angry, then understood everyone's strange behavior when I arrived. The dowry my parents saved for me was indeed in my hands, but telling others about it obviously meant no loans. I got the picture and signaled my aunt to continue. She fidgeted a bit, then said, "Since your wedding's off, and Mandy is getting married, David's family said we must give at least $200,000 as dowry, but the bride price is $500,000. You're not using your dowry now, which I heard is more than $200,000. Why not lend some for Mandy's wedding? Once we get the bride price from David's family, we'll surely repay." Even though I had an inkling of their audacity, I was still angry at their shamelessness. "Do you even have any decency left?" My mom was furious. She's always been dignified, and this was the first time I'd seen her so mad. My aunt awkwardly turned toward me, her eyes full of expectation. Overwhelmed by anger, I laughed. "So you want me to lend my dowry to my cousin for her to marry my ex-fiancé? Well, that's not how you should say it." As my aunt kept talking, her voice got lower, like she finally realized she might be in the wrong at that moment. My uncle lit a cigarette, took a drag, and blew out the smoke. "Let's cut to the chase. Are you gonna lend me the money or not?" His audacity almost made me laugh out loud. "I don't need a whole sentence. One word, no." He smashed his cigarette in the ashtray, then looked at my dad. "You really want to be this harsh, huh? You know my son, Tom, is our only male heir. You're gonna need him someday." Tom, who had been glued to his phone, looked up. "Yeah, my dad's right. I'm the only male heir. Your stuff's gonna be mine anyway. And don't think I'll help you later." My dad was practically fuming. "We don't need your son. We've got a daughter." Uncle snorted. "Once a daughter gets married, she won't be around to help. You can't rely on her." Then, trying to sound wise yet a bit smug, he added, "Hear me out. Daughters marry off, you can't count on them. But a son. He's the one. Just lend me the money today. I promise when you're old, Tom will be your best support." I didn't want any more drama. "My money's in a savings account, Uncle. But I remember Grandpa left you some money after the house was demolished, right? That should be some good savings. You must have saved up 200 grand by now." Mandy looked at her dad. "Come on, Dad. You'll get more anyway once you get the dowry from the Davids." Uncle hesitated for a moment. But my aunt whispered to him loud enough for everyone to hear, "But that's for Tom's future house. Should we really use it now?" These words sent Tom over the edge. He yelled, "No way are you giving my stuff to that useless one." Mandy looked upset, and my aunt seemed a bit embarrassed, but she didn't scold Tom. Mandy gritted her teeth, raising her voice. "Dad. Mom. David's mom said if we can't come up with the 200 grand, there'll be no dowry. Weigh it out, 200 grand versus 500 grand. After some hesitation, Uncle finally decided to cough up the 200 grand. The family left looking glum. Uncle said seriously, "Don't come crying to us if you need something from Tom someday." Mandy gave me a smug look and mouthed, "You lost." I just smirked. This isn't over. I'm not one to let things slide easily. Once the door closed with a thud, I turned to my parents. They kept sighing. "Dad, Mom, did David's mom talk to you?" They looked weary, having clearly been through a lot lately. "Don't even get us started. They left, and your aunt and uncle showed up. Why did all this nonsense have to happen? They keep pushing for this marriage, even after all that. The nerve." I held their hands gently. "Maybe we should just move to another city. Being in the middle of rumors as the victims was exhausting. I couldn't stand it, let alone my parents. There's a company transfer opportunity to a southern city, and it requires at least a 10-year stay. Since it's pretty far, even with the salary hike, no one's applied yet. Seems like a good fit for me. After my parents agreed, I submitted my application. I listed my apartment with a realtor, moved in with my parents, and sold valuable stuff online. I gave whatever was left to the scrap collector downstairs. We kept my parents' current house, just in case we ever want to return. Once everything's set and my work here's wrapped up, we'll head south. I didn't expect a call from David. Seeing his name on the screen made me frown. Been so busy I forgot to block him. I hit answer anyway, might be worth seeing what he says. David's voice shot through the phone, aggressive. Why'd you change the door code on the house? I couldn't help but chuckle. I'm selling it. Sell it? You didn't even ask me. His voice was so loud, I moved the phone away. Then I answered, first, the thought of filthy things happening in there makes me sick. So, I don't want it. His breathing got heavy. I continued, second, it's my house. I can do what I want. I need your permission now. Who do you think you are? Getting my point, David softened his tone. I didn't mean it like that. Stayed there a while, got attached plus, do you even know how to sell a house? Don't let the realtor trick you. Then why don't you buy it? I said. Satisfy your attachment and avoid the realtor. That shut him up for a moment. Then he said, it's your house, so it's your call. If you're selling, I'm out. I just have stuff inside. Ah, that was his endgame. I sneered, I bought the things myself. I sold what I could, tossed what I couldn't. Sold my stuff? Who do you think you are? I snickered, like I said, I paid for it all. David's voice turned venomous, okay, all right. You want to do it this way? Don't blame me then. Once everyone knows you're just damaged goods, barren too, let's see how you live here. With that, he hung up. I shook my head. Society always judges women. If you're from the gossip world, you'd notice it punishes women more, even for a man's mistakes. This is a moment where male gaze truly shows, but I don't care. I'm leaving this city not out of fear, but to shield my parents from more gossip. They say rumors stop with a wise person, but truly wise folks are rare anyway. Before I leave, I've got a special surprise for them. Preparation's mostly done, and I've been stuck with this infertile label for way too long. It's time to give it back to the real owner. When I got home that night, my mom told me David and Mandy kept the venue and wedding date I had previously picked with him, next Wednesday. And they even sent an invite to my uncle's house, clearly trying to annoy us on purpose. My mom looked worried, those bastards even spread rumors about you being infertile. You better clear this up soon, or how will you get married in the future? I didn't want to argue with her about how I could live perfectly fine without getting married. Parents always want the best for you, and actions speak louder than words. As for clearing things up, I just smiled and said, soon. This was such a great opportunity they handed to me. We were leaving next Friday and would miss seeing their reaction, which would have been a shame since the invite's here. It's only right to go. I'll handle it, you guys pack our stuff. The wedding took place in a hotel with a big oath-taking ceremony. The stage setup was paid for, no refunds, so David's family wouldn't cancel. We sat in the audience, and the MC did a great job creating a lively atmosphere. The couple was about to kiss, tears in their eyes, when a phone rang and interrupted the mood. Both looked annoyed. David ignored the call at first, but whoever was calling was persistent. The phone kept ringing. With no choice, David answered. The voice came through his mic. Hello sir, you booked an infertility appointment at our clinic, but we haven't seen you. Are you still coming? David froze. Everyone else was stunned into silence. The place went deathly quiet. David's voice shook. You must have the wrong number. I never booked any appointment. Are you Mr. David? David hesitated to answer, and the caller continued, "If you are Mr. David, then we've got the right info. We've reviewed your premarital medical report, and it shows low sperm count. Can you confirm?" The caller didn't get to finish. David hung up, staring right at me with a terrifying glare, and I just smiled back. He then turned to Mandy, who was already panicking, and slapped her hard, knocking her down. "Bitch! Trying to marry me while pregnant with someone else's kid," he shouted, ripping off the mic and storming out, leaving Mandy pleading on the floor. David's parents were shocked, but with the groom gone, they had to calm the guests. My uncle glared at Mandy, "You're a disgrace." No one paid attention to Mandy until the MC yelled, "She's bleeding. Call an ambulance." Everyone turned to see blood spreading under Mandy's wedding dress. Chaos erupted while I calmly left. Our stuff was already shipped off, and the three of us were waiting for security checks at the airport, each with a suitcase. Mandy was still in the hospital, and David was MIA. Both sets of parents were scrambling around. But it had nothing to do with us anymore. We were about to board a plane and start a new life. Epilogue. Later, a mutual friend told me my uncle's family and David's were in a legal battle. Because of David's slap, Mandy couldn't have kids anymore. And David's family couldn't afford the dowry or medical expenses, not even the $20,000 they received before the wedding. Mandy had a hard time at home. One day, she left and never returned, leaving my uncle and aunt furious but helpless, stuck in a legal fight with David's family. David went to the hospital, only to get bad news. He spent his days drowning in alcohol. David's family business collapsed faster than I thought. The $20,000 disappeared without a trace, and my uncle and aunt kept pressuring them. "It's a huge mess now." My friend sounded a bit emotional when talking about it, and I just nodded and said, "Don't tell me about their drama anymore." My friend was surprised, thinking I'd be happy. I used to feel that way, but not anymore. I felt calm, no joy from revenge. With a slight smile, I said, "There are more important things than them. They're not worth my time and feelings. What I should do now is live well and make the most of life."